Welcome everyone to What's Your Story. I'm your host Emmanuel Mutui, and today I have an amazing guest. Now this guy, for a while, I've been trying to get him to come to this show. And he's like, no. My story is too crazy, it's too crazy. I'm like, that's why I need to share it. I'm not even lying, for 6 months. And then at the beginning of the year, maybe like 2 months ago, he was like, I think it's time. I was like, we gotta set it up as soon as we can. So, we are in for a treat. It's gonna be an amazing show. And without further ado, my guest for today, Ricky Bobby.
Thank you for having me, sir.
So, I'm glad you finally said yes.
Yeah, it was kind of crazy. It was one of those, I don't like to share my story.
Yeah. And feel free, we'll go at your pace, however you feel like the Lord is putting on your heart to share. There's no,
Okay.
like you have to share this kind of thing. So we'll start from the beginning like we always do. Where are you from?
I am originally from here, Colorado Springs.
Okay. Oh, so I didn't know that.
Yeah, native. Yeah.
And to kind of jump ahead, how did you end up in Florida then?
How did I end up in Florida?
Yeah.
I've never been in Florida. Got married in Florida.
Okay.
But then never any of that.
So,
and I say got married. It was our honeymoon was in Florida.
Okay, that's probably what I remember. You were born here.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of family were you born into?
I was born into a family without a father. So my mother, she drove herself to the hospital to give birth. Actually took a cab, and yeah. So my biological father, he's been in and out of the picture. I'd say up until about age 12.
Okay.
But he really not much there.
How, obviously we know children growing up without a father is a big deal.
Sure.
How did that impact you?
Well, I didn't realize it was impacting me at the time.
Okay.
At 2 years old, my mother, she met a guy. She actually drove or went to Montana, and that's where she met a man in Montana named Dave.
Okay.
We call him Grandpa Dave.
Yeah.
So she was married to him for 8 years, and he was a sheriff for the El Paso County Sheriff's Department.
So
he was my father for the next 10 years of my life. But what I classify him as a father,
yeah.
that's
Yeah.
part of the story, I guess.
So Grandpa Dave.
Yes.
He became your father for a while.
Yep.
When you were in this pre-adolescent age, what did you want to do?
What did I want to do?
Yeah, with your life.
When I was from 0 to 10 years old?
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny you asked me that. I wanted to be a glass blower.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wait, why?
Why? Thought it was cool.
Yeah.
It was one of those things. I also went to a blacksmithing class, and actually saw it. It was at the White House or White Horse Ranch or whatever it was. Saw this guy doing blacksmithing. So those are two things that I really liked. I really enjoyed it as a kid. Didn't think much of it, but glass blowing was actually I wanted to do that.
So you go into your teens years, and you said Grandpa Dave was there for about 8 to 10 years.
Yes.
How was that after he departs? What kind of life? How are you?
Well, I'd have to back up and go to the 8 years that he was there. He was at that man that he either laid on the couch or sat on the couch every Sunday. He'd be watching football, Sunday and Monday Night Football. If his team didn't win, that rest of the week would be pretty horrific. He was as a sheriff, and he became a lieutenant. I believe he retired as a lieutenant. It was all about his career, and it was all about football. And if us kids needed something fixed, we'd go to him. He would basically yell at us, tell us to get out. There were several times that I remember where my mother had called me because it was working family. So when we came home from school, there was nobody home. It was just us and my brothers. She would call and say, "Hey, you need to get out of the house until you get home. Your dad's mad. If you're in his presence, he'll probably get you." So there has been many a times where he would beat us down pretty good. So very violent man. We just learned not to poke the bear. He was just that guy that laid on the couch, and that guy was. We just didn't mess with him. So if bicycles are broken, we had to figure it out ourselves. If it was just anything. So
Wow.
up until 10, he ended up cheating on my mother, and they had a separation. So
So after he leaves, are you relieved? Obviously, you're relieved, but how does that change the home dynamic?
we just kind of dealt with it. I won't say it hurt us or crushed us or anything like that. It wasn't. We were sad that mom was sad, but for us, he wasn't even there as a father. So to us, okay, good riddance. It was no big deal.
So how, for now, he leaves, you're already kind of your own man
Yeah.
because you've been doing your own thing. How did that prepare you or set you up for your 20s?
I'd have to say that that taught us to be more self-reliant. So being taught or being an adult at a younger age, I think is way better than coddling and things like that. So I guess God,
Yeah.
used that for my benefit. Maybe I don't know. I can't
So
answer that.
he leaves, you're dependent on yourself, as you said. Mm-hmm. What are you trying to do at this point with your life?
What am I trying to do with this? Probably. Well, I guess it'd be goofing off, playing, doing what kids do. I'd say from age 10 to 14ish. I would say that was a pretty okay, I guess. Us kids, we played our video games, I guess. Went out and played, did all that stuff.
Did you go to high school?
It was that would be in middle school.
Okay.
That would be in middle school. Yeah, I think that's about right. Starting to wrestle, starting to do those things, starting to do the athletics things. Prior to, I've got dyslexia, so that was an issue all through my childhood on up to high school. So I didn't learn how to read until I was 16, 17 years old. So, and I say read, I mean legitimately read. I could pick out things. I memorized basically all the words. So if I saw a word, I could just tell you what the word is. I didn't actually know how to read it. So, but that's self-taught.
So it seems like most of your childhood, it's all self-taught, all self.
I would say a little bit of that, but I would have to say that my father that came into my picture, who I classify as my dad, he's the one who he taught me a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we go into high school, you learn how to read, you're a sports guy. When does your father come in the picture?
My mother starts dating again around when I was about 13, 14. And she ends up marrying this guy, and his name is Curtis. And again, he's my dad. He was the man, I guess, that I was looking for. I didn't, dad-wise, that was always in the picture that never had a dad. So, and the dad I did have wasn't really a dad. So, but he came into my life. He taught me a lot of things. He taught me how to build engines, fix things, work hard, all through my I guess adolescence from 14 on up. He was there. He was in the picture, teaching me man stuff. Now I say that when we did athletics and things like that, my parents weren't in the picture with athletics. That was just one of those. If you want to do it, do it. We might come to a game or two to support you, but it's not really You know, that wasn't, they're more concerned about working and paying the bills than it was what we were doing. So anything extracurricular was on us.
Yeah.
So
You finished high school. What did you want to? Was there a plan?
was there a plan to finish high school? Yes, there was. Through that, from age 14 to, I would say, 18, 19, I hung out with this buddy of mine, and we were big into race cars. Loved racing. Racing was one of those things that we loved to do. And that was one of those things that we wanted to keep it going. So in high school, we started doing the racing thing and working on cars and things like that. As we got out of high school, we put together some cars and we were running Beacon Hill and things like that. And then that's we got into a little bit of college, took welding classes just to help better ourselves there. Got into engineering and all that good stuff, and essentially that's what got me into stepping up into a higher reality in racing. Got into the Winston West circuit and ran in Winston West for a little bit. So nothing crazy, and that's nothing high end. It's 3 steps below. I'd say it's the minor leagues, if you'd call that.
Really? Oh wow.
So, but it was definitely fun, but it was also life changing.
Why'd you say that?
So, in that year of racing, there was a lot of activities, a lot of things that we had to do. We had 16, 18-hour days. The first week wasn't too bad. Second week got worse. Third week got worse. It's how do you keep up? You know, you're working with other crew guys, and that's where drugs kind of fall into play. You know, I wasn't. I had tried marijuana when I was younger. Didn't like it. wasn't my thing. But when I got older, I found out that speed and cocaine were awesome, and that's what I could work 2 3 hour days and not have a problem. And that's, you know, that was due to the drugs. The drugs would keep you going. Well, the problem with that is it takes more and more and more, and you keep going more and more. It turns into a pretty bad deal. And then at the tail end of I'd say my racing career, when I wanted out, that's when heroin was involved, and I was pretty messed up on that stuff for
Yeah. So
a little bit.
before we get there, how long were you in that? Were you in the racing business?
Oh man, well we probably raced, I bet you, from 16 to 23, 24, 25, 26. I would go 10 years, easily 10 years of racing, nonstop racing. But once you got to that higher end, that higher scale, I was in the Winston West thing it was about 8 9 months, give or take.
And
And at the tail end of that's when the drugs kind of kicked in.
also the drugs came in towards the end.
Yes, yeah, the
And
bad stuff did.
before, so we'll continue there. But how, spiritually speaking, what is God to you at this point?
So, my father, when I first, I always I knew there was a God or whatever. I always prayed to God, but I didn't know God at all as a teenager or as a kid or whatever. Been to church, whatever, but still nothing quite like that. But 18, my father, he kind of started seeing there we were kind of going into a bad direction. When I was 16, that's when, you know, driver's licenses and things like that. But well, we also hung out with the baseball team and football team, and one of the things we liked to do was on the nights is we would go out and do bad stuff. We would run around and go to the gay clubs in town and beat up the gays and beat them up pretty bad. We're talking a bunch of rednecks coming out of the in pickup trucks, pulling up and back, waiting for the gays to come out, and it didn't matter whether it was gays, blacks, Hispanics. It didn't matter. We would whatever came out, we would wreck them. And you know, one of those things we'd have, you know, baseball bats with teeth, prints of teeth in them, or teeth broken off into the baseball bats, things like that. It was pretty bad. We did that all through high school. That was just a pastime. Prior to 16, 15, 16, going to a gun show and, walk around seeing all the nice guns and all the cool stuff and all that. And then in the back, there's this whatever you want to call it, where they have stuff. I don't know. But anyways, they happened to be the KKK guys. And I went there, it was just a bunch of white dudes, talking, and they looked pretty good. They weren't bikers or nothing like that. They weren't, they just looked like, for the most part, normal guys. But of course, they're talking, they talk their talk and telling us, the white race is a perfect race, and then, it was pure. But at a young age, I didn't know any better. I had no idea. All I knew is what me and my buddies did, and I was just part of the. So of course, they wanted us to join that thing, if you will, and I remember buying some paraphernalia from them, and one of them was this T-shirt, and it was a T-shirt of a Klan member, and it had a finger just like you'd see on Uncle Sam, and it was pointing directly there, and it says, "I want you." And I remember wearing that shirt a lot and walking around places where I shouldn't be wearing it, and getting into fights. And I would, on a Friday night, on a Saturday night, we would go out and look for fights and look for trouble and things like that. So from 16 on up, got in trouble a little bit. My first father, who's the sheriff, he had heard that I was getting into some trouble, so he wanted to do a Scared Straight program thing and brought me into that, thinking that would fix me. And so I spent the weekend in jail with legit criminals and all that, and it was kind of horrific. But again, it wasn't. I'm only there for 3-4 days. Who cares? All right, what are you going to do to me? You can't touch me. I had that nasty mentality. So did it work? No. I did see the other side of it. Like, okay, that's pretty bad, but I'll never be that bad. I'll never get caught. That's how I always saw it.
Wow.
So yeah. So,
man.
But in the process, my father, he comes into play, and at 18, he takes me to this thing called Promise Keepers.
Yeah.
So, and it was in Boulder, and it was a 3-day event. We get there, and I didn't want to go in the first place. I didn't find it any desire to do it. But I do remember that's when I accepted Jesus as my Savior. I remember standing in the stadium, and there's 20,000 men, and they're all singing. I could feel a presence. I don't know, electricity. That's probably almost, yeah, electricity in the air. It was the weirdest, craziest feeling. But that's when I asked Jesus into my heart. That was when there was an actual change.
At 18.
At 18, and I think that was the stepping stone. Now, the thing about that is you see all those men. You're 18. You leave that, and then what do? Okay, you've got all this info. You got downloaded. Jesus in you. Now what? And that's when I look back now. I see that, and I get frustrated with that situation.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, from 18 on up, of course, I still continue to do what I was doing,
But
just because I was saved.
Yeah. After you're saved, are you still doing stuff with the KKK?
Yeah. We're still teenagers. We're still doing stuff that we shouldn't be doing. Mm-hmm. We're if we're not racing, we're rodeoing. If we're not rodeoing, we're going out causing trouble.
Wow. So you do that. You get into the Western Circle for that, mm-hmm. and then at 26, 5 there,
yeah,
you get out. But now you're into heavy drugs.
So
What
yeah.
happens after this?
So in that process, I I'm kind of coming out of this bad place that I'm in. Um, I've kind of kicked the heroin off, which is probably the best thing I could ever do. You know what I'm saying? Um, that was 23, 24ish. I come into meeting my wife, Brandy. Now I'm still in that party. All right, drugs didn't catch me, then I'm doing pretty good. I'm off speed and coke. That's too expensive. I didn't have the cash flow to do it. So that, I guess, again, that's God in playing His hand there and saying, well, you no longer have the access or the cash to get it. Can't do it. From there on out, I'm with Brandy, and the thing is with Brandy is I'm also with two other women. So, and the one of the women she is pregnant with my child named Courtney, and she's about to give birth here any moment, and I'm messing around with two other chicks. So I've got three girls in the mix, um, and it's a big mess. It's a crazy big mess. Um,
How
at
did you navigate? I mean, you still married to Brandy. Did she ever find out?
yeah, she knows.
I'm
She
talking like in
knows.
the middle of all this.
Yeah, she knows. She knows. And there's still some things that I haven't told um, Brandy. Um, that they're still. And one day, I don't know. We'll see.
Hmm.
It's tough, but that was one of the deals was Brandy won out on all that. She just kind of she was the best. I mean, there's again, and God's hand is in that. I can't because if I would have been with those other two ladies, um, I don't think it would have lasted at all. I've been with Brandy now going on, it'd be 20 years. We've been together 22 years. So,
Wow.
so it's been
So
awesome.
obviously you stopped dating the other girls,
Yes,
and you chose Brandy.
yes.
And where were you living at this time?
Where were we living at this time? At that point in time, when I was with Brandy and the other girls, I was actually living at home on my mother's couch in the basement.
Wow.
So it was a big mess. Originally, I was in an apartment. We moved out when we were 18, 19. We moved out. As soon as high school was over, me and my buddies, we got a place and we were good up until that part. But I remember living at home. I remember my mother telling me, "You've got 3 months. Get it together, or you'll be out on the street. I'm not dealing with this." And usually, when mom says that, that's legit, and you gotta. So having strong parents and not having parents with spineless backbones, they 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 push your kids. I mean, your kids are supposed to go out and do good things, not bad things.
Hmm.
So, so yeah, 3 months. It was 3 months. I believe I did push it to 4 or 5 months, but that was in the process of buying a house and all
Yeah.
that, and
Wow.
getting a place for Brandy and all that fun stuff.
So wow, you get yourself a house. What kind of job are you doing at this time?
At that point in time, because of my racing career, I knew how to weld and I knew how to do sheet metal work. And I always skinned, we call it skinning cars. We would do sheet metal on race cars. Well, from there, I got into a, it was a local 9 sheet metal workers is where I went into and was an apprentice for 4 years. And from there,
Okay. So
so
when did you start your company?
started my company. I want to say it's 8, 9 years ago.
Okay.
So that's so I was in that company for 23 years when I was working.
Wow.
So
And I remember we had a conversation a while back, and you mentioned that you're out of debt and you never want to go back in the debt.
Yeah.
Tell me that story.
So from buying the house, Brandy and I, we just didn't know. We didn't know anything about what the right thing to do is. Everyone always told us, "Hey, you're supposed to be in debt. That's your goal. You're going to have to loan or borrow money or vice versa. You got to do that." So we understood that. Okay, great. At that point in time, it was back in the 2000s. We had a house in Stetson Hills. It was a nice house, nothing crazy. Bought it for 145,000, which now, hindsight now, it's selling for 650, 700,000. So I kind of, those are the things you look back and you go, man, what did I do? But having a mortgage and then getting a second mortgage, then refinancing the first and combining the first and the second, and it's just a nonstop. How many? I mean, I had 3 mortgages on the house, 3 mortgages on it. And what's crazy is the loaners didn't care. They're slinging money. The equity was there, all that fun stuff. So again, we're upside down in the house. So when we get the call from the bank, and then keep in mind that there was college bills for Brandy, and then on top of me and my lifestyle, I'm used to one lifestyle, and I'm trying to move forward and keep that lifestyle. I've got several credit cards, and it was a lot. I mean, it was so much. I look back on it now, and I'm trying to remember exactly the amount that we paid off, and I think it was right around 135K is what we paid off when we were doing Dave Ramsey.
Wow.
So in that process, and that's again, God's hand is in there. I tell you, God's hand's been in my life the whole way through. But yeah, it was a mess.
Wow.
We started paying off all the debt. We kept the house going for as long as we could. But there was just a point where we talked to the banks, and the banks were saying one thing, and they said, "Well, we can't help you if you're not in trouble, and we don't care what you did with the other stuff, but this is, And it was a big mess. It was just one of those.
Wow.
But
you paid off 123.
Yeah,
That's
I think it was 123 or 135. I can't even remember now.
Wow.
But it was a gob. It was a gob, and again, that was one of those. In that process of paying that off, again, God was in the picture. There was times where we would look at our checkbooks and go, I don't think we're going to make the mortgage payment, or I don't think we're going to make this. And every month, we always had just enough or more. Yeah. And it was just one of those where the numbers didn't add up. You could, and in those days, I mean, we were keeping track of the numbers. We were pretty focused on. So just seeing the balance sheet, God's balance sheet versus ours, totally two different worlds.
So, on separate topic, you have all girls.
All 3 girls, yes.
From a lifestyle that you're coming from, where girls on top of girls, drugs and all that, ain't that kind of funny that God just gave you girls?
Yeah, it's hilarious. Yeah. So hilarious. That's something that I always crack jokes about. Being a womanizer, I guess. I don't know if that's the right word for it. I was known for sleeping around a lot. I remember when meeting Brandy for the first time, and my buddy and I were driving off, and I looked at my buddy and I said, "Why didn't you?" And he goes, "You're not allowed to see her, touch her, look at her. She is off limits." And I'm like, "What?" And he goes, "You know what I'm talking about." So, and that was something that, us guys, we wouldn't date each other's girlfriends or things like that. And if a buddy said, "You need to steer clear of that, go get your own," which is fine. And that was something that Brandy was in our circle when we were racing at the tail end. She was there for 2 years. And when we got married, that's when I completely pulled out of racing
Yeah.
and said, okay, I'm done with it. I can't do it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
The hours are it's
Yeah.
ridiculous. But yeah, so
Wow. So now having girls though, does that make you more obviously makes you more sensitive? Do you
I'm not a sensitive person. I I am so for
Yeah.
reals.
Really?
No, and Brandy can. I am not.
Ricky, stop.
I am so. I kid you not. I mean, there's times where, sure, I'm emotional or this or that. Um, well, that's something as a dad. I always fight with not knowing what to do. Okay, the girls are crying. Okay, what do I do? Do I go hug them? Do I? Oh, I don't want to. There's just you don't want to deal with it. Um, they're emotional and
Mm-hmm.
their world is chaotic and I just I lose it. It's tough for me.
Yeah, I understand
So
that.
so to be sensitive, um, when their nail polish doesn't come out right, sorry. There's so many things. But I do believe that God brought girls into my life, just for that.
Yeah,
You know,
definitely softens you up a lot.
there's yeah, for sure, for sure.
So let's go back to your journey with Christ because here at the church, we have an amazing men's ministry, and you're a key part of that.
Oh yeah,
Because it's every Tuesday morning, and he shows up here. Well, it's Tuesday at 6, but he shows up at 3 to get the food going, and you have the best spread you'll ever see.
okay,
All kinds of meats, all kinds of potatoes. And that's all you. You
yeah,
kind of spearhead that. Let's talk about that side of things, your journey, your spiritual journey,
okay.
because we've not really talked
So
about it.
so from 18 to I don't know 26, 28. I'll actually go in. Um, I'll say when I was my 30, 32. That's actually when I'll tell you this when I became a man. From 32 on down, I was just a kid with a checkbook. I was just a boy with a checkbook that had
Mm-hmm.
zero common sense. Um, when we were doing the Dave Ramsey thing, and that's part of Dave Ramsey is um, there's a little bit of God involved in there. And when I say a little bit, it's a sprinkle of God. And I remember a lot of um, we started doing we went to the 12-week classes, and then after the 12-week, I looked at Brandon. I was like, and part of that 12 weeks was you need to find a church. You need to go to church, and you need to do that. So during that first time with Dave Ramsey and the classes, there was a couple that invited us to church. So we went to church and we're like, okay, I guess this is what we're supposed to do. So something that my father taught me was, if there's something that needs to be done, you need to get on and do it. So as we get involved with that church, we're doing things here and there and doing whatever we can. And I think God sees that and he appreciates that and he blesses us. So that walk with Christ started to mature. And I think that was pretty amazing. It was when we got kicked out of our first church, and that's because we decided we're going to coordinate FPU, Financial Peace University. So we coordinated that and did classes for, gosh, I think it was 10 years maybe. So we did FPU classes, did 3 things every year. So that was 3 12 class deals it was awesome.
Yeah.
And walked with families, helped paying off debt as we were going through and paying off our debt.
Yeah.
Met Dave Ramsey, all that cool stuff. But yeah, as we got kicked out of our first church, and we of course had to find another church. That was our job. So we came into a second church, and we liked it as a good church, awesome. We were there, gosh, I want to say maybe 10 years, maybe 8 to 10. I'd have to
Yeah.
double check that, but I'm not sure. But I remember it was about the first 3 4 months they had a men's group. And I was like, yeah, all right, men's group. Okay, that sounds, I'm a man, let's do this. I think that's cool. They did it every 3 months, and it was a breakfast. And we came in and helped out. I did a breakfast for it. And that was something that I really liked.
Yeah.
And I fall back into Promise Keepers. I had Promise Keepers. We did that, but after Promise Keepers, there was nothing else. I couldn't keep it going. So here we are at this other church where we do a men's group every 3 months. It's okay. It's nothing great. 10, 12 guys showed up, made them breakfast. Nothing crazy. I think the max number was maybe 30, if it ever got that big. But it still wasn't. It just wasn't the meat and potatoes. I felt like I was getting bread. I want substance, you know. And we are asked to leave that church, and in the process, and again, God's hand is in that. There's a buddy of mine and said, "Hey, you need to, there's this guy who, really cool guy. His name's Steve Holt." And I'm like, "Wow, that name sounds familiar." I said, "Isn't that the guy on the radio?" He goes, "I'm not sure if he's on the radio, but," and all through my time going through the custody battle with my first daughter and child support and things like that, Steve Holt and Todd Hutnell were one of the guys I listened to on the radio. And those are guys that, and many a day they kept me from committing suicide.
Really?
I figured if I had pretty good life insurance, so those are things about those that you think about often yourself, and then Brandy would have all the money she needs. I'd be doing don't need me. She'd go find herself a rich guy or something. I don't know, but there was several. Yeah,
Wow.
and I would say all through, even through my adolescence on up, suicide was always something that was always in my head. I always thought about it. I remember middle school or elementary school. That kid that you like that one girl dumps you, and then you end up thinking, you know what? I bet if I killed myself, she would think about me. If I left her a note, those kind of things. But yeah, that you have that, and then you start, as you get older, you start to justify it, and that's one of those things that suicide isn't the answer. You can't justify suicide. That's a that's just dumb.
Yeah.
It's not even.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
So, how did you eventually come to the road?
So I talked to this fella, and he talks about Steve Holt and Todd Hutnell and all that, and we're like, okay, and it was called The Road, and I was like, all right, that's cool, and showed up, came here, and first day was first service. We were sitting in front of Dennis and Michelle Cates, and and I was like, and there's this dude Steve, he's up there and he's talking. I'm like, man, this guy's good. This guy, okay, this guy's like a man's man. He's a little short, but he's okay. Okay, because you always hear the voice on the radio, you never see the face, and it happened to be the day he was doing his book signing for.
Worship Warrior?
No, it wasn't Worship Warrior. It was the marriage book.
Okay.
And I'm like, and Brandon's like, oh my gosh, you love him. You should get his autograph or something. I'm like, oh, okay. And that was one of those awkward moments. But I remember Dennis going, there's a men's fire every Tuesday. And they called that morning fire, I believe it was. And he goes, you should check that out. You'd like that. And he shook my hand and all that. And this Dennis guy was pretty top notch. Okay. So we left, and Brandon and I kind of talked about it, and she goes, "What did you think?" I said, "Well, I don't know about you, but I'm coming back on Sunday. You can come with me or not. Your choice." And she looked at me and she goes, "No, that's our choice." And it's like, and I said, "Well, what do you think?" She goes, "I liked it." So that Sunday we went to church. That following Tuesday, I went to Morning Fire, and then that's when I met up with one of the guys who was making coffee, and I said, "Hey, do you need help doing this?" And he goes, "Sure." So I said, "I'll be here every morning. We'll make coffee," and that's how that kind of started. We'll start, coffee and donuts and things like that. 3-4 months later, Matt Wilcoxon comes in, and he has this idea of making some breakfast here and there, and we're like, okay, that's cool. And the numbers are slowly growing and all that. And then Matt had to pull out for a little bit, and he asked if I could step in and do some stuff. And I said, sure. I mean, whatever I can do to help. And that's when I started.
Wow.
I started with, I enjoy barbecuing, and I was like, oh, well, I'll make some ribs and this and that, and see if the guys will dig into it. And then it kind of created this crazy monster now.
It is.
There's a lot of dudes that show up, and there's a lot of wheels that have to be turned to make it happen. But I also look at, I've been to two advances or three advances. I want to say three advances now. And again, it's to have that follow up. You do the advance. You're with men, and you're fighting that enemy, and to have that spin off into where you're working with guys and talking to guys, and you constantly got your brothers with you just talking, and I think it's huge. I think it's men need that if we don't have it, and I strongly believe in that.
Yeah.
So
as we come here to an end, last question I want to ask you, and I think maybe this is probably, I feel like this is your message to the world. You said up until 32 you were a boy, and then after that you became a man. What is that? Explain, why did you become a man then? Or what is manhood? That's probably a better way to say it.
Wow, what is manhood? Well, I think when God puts these things in your path, and I use things for instance, I went on my first missions trip to San Diego, and again, in my past, I didn't like gays, I didn't like blacks, I didn't like any of that. And in San Diego, God puts me in a position where, for a week and a half, with my middle daughter Bella, we serve gays, transvestites, that whole community. We serve them food, and we make lunches for them and all that. And I got to meet them and talk to them, and they're just regular people. Love God. They're just a little mixed up, and God put that into my world because I was immature about that. And when my daughter, my oldest daughter, as she turns 18, she lets us know that she's a lesbian. And now that I've served in that community and kind of understand them, kind of helped me understand that she's just needs love, and she's confused. She knows who Jesus is. I don't have any worries about that. She knows where we stand. But I think being a man and moving up, I would say it's maturity, and having that wisdom and having that understanding that those are what boys do, those are what kids do. This is what an adult has to do. And sometimes what an adult has to do, it sucks. It's not a great thing. But because what God does and helps us grow and mature, I think it's huge.
Yeah. Wow, that's awesome, man. Thank you, man.
Pleasure.
This has been awesome. Thank you everyone for watching this show. It's been amazing. Remember, we all have a story. What's your story? Goodbye.